Okay, I think we are good. Excellent. Cool. Okay, so look, I've given a bit of an intro to you and what you do, but like I want to just get a sense, first of all, from you on like how you came to the world of AI. Like, what's your background and like what's your kind of knowledge base, I guess, in this world.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not very typical, so I just brought nerd glasses. Very typical when it comes to the AI side of things. And the reason for that is because I came from a background of sort of journalism, copywriting, basically written communication. So most people come into the AI sphere, the Gen AI sphere, usually with a computer science background or something along those lines. But when I got access to ChatGPT 3, and the funny story behind it is because I needed a text spinner for copywriting, and I heard that ChatGPT 3 was a good text spinner, or at least it was supposed to be. But up until that point, I always had like an interest in AI. You know, like most people, we've kind of watched movies around AI. We get the ethics around AI, and it's an interesting philosophical question of what AI actually is. So after a while, I sort of grew more and more into the concept of AI. But anyway, so I started in the world of writing and communications. But after I got access to ChatGPT 3, I started noticing on X how people were using it. And it wasn't just a simple text spinner like it was sold to me.
Mm.
It was a case of an AI that was able to do many incredible things. And I think what people don't quite appreciate at that point in time is that ChatGPT 3 didn't really have any guardrails at all. You know,
Yeah.
you could pretty much hop onto ChatGPT 3. You could get it to fetch images from the web, which we couldn't do with ChatGPT 4, 4.0, even with 5 until fairly recently. And so with ChatGPT 3, people are doing all sorts of things. So when I started seeing where the cars were falling, I started to realize, well, actually, does that mean my job in communications and copywriting is in jeopardy? Because this is 3, right? And it can do a fairly decent job. It can do, entry level to, I'd say, probably quite advanced, even at 3. Then I started to say, okay, well, I have to make that pivot. People need to communicate with the AI in order to get the best results out of it. People need to make sure that the AI is behaving, because 9 out of 10 times it doesn't. And that's a communication problem if you're prompting the machine. It's not a technical problem. So I pivoted. Haven't really looked back since. I sold my first prompt back in March, April, so fairly early into the AI hype cycle, and that was for a medical company up in California. But then I've never really looked back, and it's just sort of been one massive avalanche of AI stuff throughout the years. So yeah, at the moment I run my own company. I have the funny little blue tick box next to my name on LinkedIn for all of the prompt engineering insights. And yeah, I'm sort of in the position I'm in now, quite fortunately, talking to Fortune 500s about AI, still doing prompt engineering, getting my hands dirty, and consulting as well. So yeah, that's my sort of story in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah. Great story. And so it's interesting that you're, I guess, that you spotted. So, I mean, you must have been early to prompt engineering as a vocation, I guess.
Yeah, I think back then it was a laughable concept. I think most people were genuinely like, this is never going to be a thing. I think even Sam Altman himself was somewhat anti-prompt engineering in the early periods, because logically, if you're going to be using this as an average day-to-day person, it should be as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
But what companies and generally industries started finding was that ChatGPT, even though you gave a very simple request, it needed more tinkering. The words that you used started mattering a lot more. And because of that, prompt engineering started becoming more of a legitimized job and role. And it didn't take very long either. I think I remember hopping onto Reddit in February of 2023 and seeing quite a lot of criticism around prompt engineering.
Yeah.
And a part of me is like, actually, they're quite valid, because why would you pay someone to just talk to the AI? And if anyone can do it, why can't they? But it's the same with every kind of role in the business. If you can get Deloitte and EY to do the consulting, why can't you just get another company to do it for a fraction of the price? And it's always that question. But yeah, I sort of came in very, very early. And I landed my first Fortune 500 towards the tail end of 2023. And that was something. It was a different time back then, because Copilot was so rough around the edges, and I think we were still on ChatGPT 4 and not even 4.0. So
Right.
it was hell of a time.
Yeah. So I guess the big enterprises, they're like they're like they're like ships, right? They sort of they turn slowly. So I guess they're probably employing people like you to come in and do all of that kind of like be the speedboat that's kind of going around the edges to kind of figure out the way forward, right? Like because it takes a long time for a big ship to change direction, but I guess they're probably wanting to understand what direction they want to be going in. Is that like a is that a terrible analogy, or does that kind of make sense?
Most companies, and I've been very, very vocal about this on LinkedIn, sometimes to my own detriment. And it's a case of most companies really want to be involved in the AI field, and there's a lot of FOMO, and just generally there is fear out there. And to work with, at least 9 out of 10 of the times, they adopt an AI sort of like Microsoft Copilots, ChatGPT Teams, or Enterprise,
Yeah,
or even have an in-house LLM, whatever it might be, a wrapper or something. And they think that's it, job done. We sort of said we are AI enabled when that's actually not quite the case. So then they have problems because people aren't adopting it, and it really is like a ship. So the captain might say, okay, we're going this way, but not everyone's on page, and not everyone's reading from that same page either. So you kind of got to rope people in and come up with a strategy to get them to adopt this technology, but also, more importantly, to make them more passionate about the technology. And I think companies really struggle with that currently, because although they might spend hundreds of thousands on licensing for Copilot and all these tools, most people kind of look at it and go, that's really cool and really neat, and then they'll toss it to the side as just sort of they're waiting for them. So yeah, really want to go a direction of AI, but the problem is they're not quite sure how to do it.
yeah. Yeah, it's your signal is not amazing, by the way. So, but I think I caught the most of what you just said there. So, I also want to talk about. So,
Let me try.
still with us?
Oh, there you go. You're back again. Hello, Tom.
Oh, that's much better. What did you do?
There we go. I shook my phone angrily, and it sort of fixed it.
Okay,
The old hit the
wonderful.
technology and pray it works.
Okay, brilliant. That's so much better. Great
I'm
stuff.
glad.
Lovely. All right. I should have said something right at the beginning. Okay, cool. So look, I want to talk about frameworks then. Like, what do we mean when we talk about an AI framework? And like, what's the difference between a framework and just a prompt or a series of prompts?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of I'll just preface this for everyone else, but a lot of the time when we talk about AI in a company, I hear interchangeable terms, and those interchangeable terms, just for a bit of ironically context, is around things like prompt engineering, context engineering, and you just hear these terminologies sort of thrown around loosely because there's no predefined thing of what it is.
Yeah.
Another example of this is like GEO, generative engine optimization. So when people search in ChatGPT, does their product come up? But I think the problem that most companies face is what is a framework when it comes to AI, because you really do have two sorts of options. You have an agent, which you can sort of call a framework, which is really just a refiner. And what that means is it'll take a bit of information, and then at the very end, it will output the final product and is refine something that's raw into something that's usable. But when we talk about prompt frameworks, they're slightly different because you have a stack of prompts. So you'll refine it down, but you'll be doing it manually almost, and making sure that you can look at things on a step-by-step basis rather than depending on a full-scale automation or something along those lines. So an example of that would probably be like copying and pasting a science article, getting it to output 10 of the most important points from the perspective of a decision maker. And then at the end of that, you'll have your 10 bullet points, and then you'll write an article for drafting with whatever large language model you use. And that will save you a bit of time, and that would be considered a framework. So you're following it step by step. It's a sequence.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because it's. I think kind of going back to the point you were making previously about how this technology is made for anyone to use, but an expert can get so much more out of it. I think a lot of, it seems to me anyway, a lot of what you do and what prompt engineering is really just breaking out your thought process or your work process in much more detail than you would ever consciously do previously, so that you're able to give the LLM a much more granular and detailed set of instructions than you would do with just a 1 or 2 line kind of throwaway search query or whatever. Is that like a
Yeah,
fair characterization?
yeah, that's very fair. I think most of the time people will approach large language models and treat it more or less like Google, and I think that's a very, very big problem because a lot of the time what I tend to find is that people pick up something like ChatGPT. I'm only using as an example because it's the most popular one, and they'll give it maybe 1 or 2 sentences, and when that magical spark doesn't happen for them because they've sort of misused it and they've not really taken the time to learn how it all works, they become disenchanted by the idea of AI. They suddenly start saying things like, it's just not there yet, it's just not good enough. But the reality is that half the time it actually is good enough, if not more. And so breaking things down into, as you say, granular steps, or breaking things down into information for the AI to use, or even just steps, is easily the way to go when it comes to these things. But the problem is of course, that most people treat this technology like it's Google rather than treating it like it's an AI. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the problem when we talk about AI literacy. And I think that's why it's such a big deal in the UK, because most of the time we talk about AI and most people still think of Terminator and they still think of, movies and media, and that's completely fine because that's sort of what we've been raised on for the past 40-ish years, probably a lot longer. But I think as time goes on, people really need to understand how these tools work, but more importantly, the risks that they carry and the things that they can and can't do. But that's all something that will come in time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm forever kind of blown away by, because like Pencil obviously it's a creative platform, right? So we aggregate the big image and video generation models as well as text, but I'm forever blown away at how much detail the creative the creative team or creatives in general, how much thought and detail they will put into their prompting to get like advertising quality outputs from image gen and video gen. Because I think, just as you say, just, the average sort of layman using ChatGPT to generate an image, it will be just a line or two. Whereas, proper
Mm,
AI creatives will spend a lot of time really thinking about the exact detail that they want in that image to be generated. And
mm,
you do find that the more time and thought and detail you put into this stuff,
mm.
you really can level up the quality of your outputs by a much greater degree than I think people realize.
Yeah, and I think I want to just add to that because I think one of the biggest pet peeves I have, even though everyone uses them in this profession, but is it's around the similar concept of prompt generators. And I think most people would hope that they can just simply give their concept to ChatGPT and then ChatGPT writes the prompts for them. But similarly to what you're saying, you you run into this problem where if you tell ChatGPT what you want the prompt to be, ChatGPT will just sort of say, okay, well, he wants all of this stuff, he wants all of that stuff, and this is going to be the best prompt ever. But is it? I don't think it is, because I think most of the time the ChatGPT will add things to the prompt or to the image prompt, whatever it might be, that just aren't necessary, but it
Yeah.
thinks it looks better. And I think when it comes to prompting and prompt engineering, at least from a corporate level, if you were ever caught using a prompt generator, it spells problems because one, why aren't you doing it yourself if you know the brief? But two, how are you sure that that is what the client is looking for?
Yeah.
And I've run into it time and time again. And you come across people who do use the prompt generator and try to pretend it's their work, but it's full of M dashes and it's full of like the usual telltale signs that it's generated by AI. And I don't think there's anything wrong in using it. I think there is something wrong in using it and pretending that you wrote it, though. I
Yeah.
think that's a completely different matter. It's always almost the same as, say, going to a doctor and getting an AI generated response from them and then them pretending it's their own diagnosis when actually it's ChatGPT's or Anthropic's, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's a case of spending time with the prompt and making sure you're using it correctly and using the right words to generate the right results.
Yeah, I think that part of the problem, and tell me if you agree with this, part of the problem on that issue in particular, getting the AI to write your prompts and then using those prompts to create whatever it is that you want to create, is that you progressively lose specificity. The more prompting and reprompting you do, if you write the prompt yourself, you're very specific about what it is that you want, and the more you spend time thinking about the thing you want and breaking that out and putting it into the prompting, the more specific you're able to be. Whereas asking an AI to create a prompt for you, it's going to bias towards the thing that you're most likely to want rather than the specific thing that you actually do want. And so if you do that iteratively, you will get more and more of a bias to the average rather than to the far ends of the distribution of whatever it is that you're asking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that this is the thing, and I think when people start treating AI as a replacement, there's a really good example of people treating them as a replacement. I think people tend to lose their skills as well when it comes to prompting and just generally using AI, because ultimately the thing you'll run into is you will start depending on the AI a lot more, and you're quite right. It will start making things a lot more broad rather than being a lot more specific.
Yeah.
And that is quite a danger, because if you're in a corporate setting, let's say you're in, not legal because that's always the case, but let's say it's in something along the lines of HR, and you have a bot or you have an agent or you have anything really, even a framework that helps distill down cases. Well, what the AI will try and do is it will try and give you exactly the thing you want. But if it's not specific enough to the actual end user, then it's still useless. It's too broad and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And that's why we always hear about these, custom prompts and people selling prompts, or people just offering a free prompt to make ChatGPT less sycophantic, shall we say, and make it a bit more critical about what it's giving out. And I personally think that it's a symptom of what people are looking for in AI. But it is interesting. I mean, I know that this entire discussion is supposed to be about prompting AI, but I mean, the whole discussion about whether or not an AI should be sycophantic and should be critical is in another massive conversation that we could have. But it does run a danger if you have a prompt engineer in a company who just solely depends on AI generated prompts and sort of hands them over to the team and department and says, "This is great. I wrote all of this," but actually they didn't, and they don't know what's going wrong with the prompt. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
a common occurrence.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the sycophancy thing. It seems to me like it's become. I know it's a tangent, but we love tangents here on the Pencil live stream, so it's all good. The sycophancy thing, I think, is a big concern, because I've found at times that the response, if I am using it like a search engine, there's responses I want to. I'm having a particular thorny problem, and I will say, I'll say, is this the solution? It will sort of sycophantically try to make my solution correct rather than very objectively saying, no, you're wrong. And I think that there's like, if it's a medical question or something, they're quite good at, the system prompt has obviously been very explicit about the, giving correct analyses of something that's medical. But if it's a work-based query, often it will bias towards the thing that it thinks I want it to say still, even in late 2025. So I do think that that's an issue, and I can see how that would be an issue with prompt engineering, because again, it's pushing you in a biased direction rather than the direction that you objectively want, I think.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And I think that's originally what companies like Grok originally wanted for their AI. I mean, it's changed now. I mean, the original concept for Grok being a completely open and 100% truth-based AI platform, I mean, it was never going to happen anyway, because unbiased AI is basically just a concept. It's not something that could be made into reality. But that said, the concept of bias and an AI constantly agreeing with you or saying you're 100% right, really sorry, it's a danger, because if you do say something that's factually wrong, but the AI says you're completely 100% correct, that's where we start getting cases like where we see in the news of cyberpsychosis. Is that what we're calling it now? But it's
It works for me.
I don't know what we call it. I might be getting it confused with
No, I
Cyberpunk
think you're right.
2077. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's what tends to happen, because people echo chamber themselves into their own beliefs. And so if the AI is constantly agreeing with you and going, yeah, you are, 100% right, you're the emperor of the world, and you have definitely found the cure for cancer or something, and the person believes it, and then, that does tend to be a problem.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting discussion point, because is that a prompting issue in the system settings, or is that down to the training data? It's up for debate. I mean, most of the time when we talk about the sycophancy, like with ChatGPT 4.0, I think it was this year, was it last year? But when it had a really bad sycophancy problem and it was,
Yeah.
spousing emojis, it turns out it was just a system prompt error, and so it was just a simple change.
Yeah.
But these things do happen. It's an interesting philosophical problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And is that question between the training data and the system prompting, I think, is probably, it feels like maybe going to become less relevant as, like, we've used up all of the internet for training these things now, right? Like, it's only going to be, presumably going forward, it's only going to be synthetic data that's going to be new in the training sets, after a time. And so, the difference between a system prompt and a set of synthetic data that you've created to perform a particular purpose is kind of even more gray than it is now, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think there are strides that have been made in synthetic data as a whole, but I do think that there is still a bit of a problem that all of the AI companies have, which is what is and how can we use the training data, because we're running out. And I think that's the benefit that certain companies have. I mean, Google obviously has a massive benefit because it's Google. So when it does come to training data, they still have a somewhat large amount of it. And you could probably argue that Elon Musk is in a similar boat because he has X, and quite a lot of text and data runs through X. But the question, of course, is now that we're heading towards synthetic data, how well can we make the outputs so that they seem human enough, but without crossing the boundary of it being too personal? And I made a post, it was tongue in cheek the other day, I think it was yesterday, and it was about fridges and having large language models in the future. And I think the danger we're probably going to run into is when we talk to an AI, we don't want it to be psychoanalyzing us constantly.
Yeah.
But by nature, that's what a large language model does, because essentially it's just a mirror. So if you talk to it in a particular way, use a load of emojis, and especially with ChatGPT, and I think Gemini, it does remember things about your conversations, and it'll start adapting a personality to fit yours. But what it's actually doing is mirroring.
For sure. So I want to talk about frameworks that you built for enterprise. So you've built frameworks for companies like, according to my notes, Tencent, Notion, I'm sure many others. So what lessons have you taken from the work that you've done with these big companies, that like creative or marketing teams could take away from this session? Like, what are the big lessons that you've taken away from working with these big companies on these projects?
I think the first big one is just like figure out what legal's position is first, and
Really
the
interesting.
governance side of things. My God, yeah. I mean, I remember, just very slight tangent. I promise I won't talk about it for too long, but it's when I first started with my first Fortune 500 client. I was so excited because I was like, this is it, this is the big leagues, and I get to do really cool and crazy things. No, it turns out that when you join a massive corporation, there's governance, there's legal, there's of course stakeholders, and there's upper management and all the rest to consider. And although as a contractor you do have certain leeway, and they do take you a little bit differently because that's why you're there, the more important side of that is making sure that the things that you generate with the AI tend to be compliant with what the stance is at the company that you're working for. Because it depends on the company, but let's say, I don't know, let's say something like Tencent. I mean, with Tencent, there is AI in practically every aspect of what they're doing currently, and I can't reveal too much. But if you were to use AI for a campaign and the AI has decided to hallucinate or whatever else, and you haven't gotten it cleared, that can spell danger for reputation. That can spell danger for all sorts of things.
Mm.
Another one, and probably pharmaceutical companies. Again, I can't mention any company names, but if you were to use AI for generating summaries of, let's say, research and development, but those summaries are just riddled with inconsistencies and they just have hallucination problems still, then you're going to run into some legal problems, which is why it's really important to have these discussions and have it checked over at least once. And even though it takes a little bit more time, it does provide quite a lot of peace of mind. So I think my advice for people who are looking to use AI in a marketing department, or just generally any department, is first just double check with what you're outputting with your manager. Let's be very clear and transparent that this is AI generated. What do you think?
Yeah.
And it's better to have that rather than just going, let's just output as much content as humanly possible, which is what a lot of companies are trying to do. And then when they output it, they get a lot of criticism from their end user because it's not authentic or it's not useful, or the dreaded it's AI slop,
Yeah.
and that's again another discussion, but
I
that's the
don't like
important
that
part.
term AI slop. It gets thrown around a lot, but I kind of feel like it's, sorry to cut you off, but
No, it's fine.
I kind of I see people throwing this term AI slop around, and I just think, have you forgotten like where this is coming from? Do you know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah,
someone generates a video of like whatever, a cat drinking a cup of tea or whatever it
yeah,
is, and people are like, oh, it's just AI slop. I sort of think this is literally, this technology did not exist like, 2
yeah,
years ago. You're creating this image from maths, right? Like
yeah.
we've built these giant digital brains, and then people are saying, oh, it's just slop. Like people get used to technology so quickly, and they're so almost, it almost feels like not ungrateful, but like just so sort of jaded with such a, like, it's literally magic that's been built, and then it's just this throwaway term. So, oh, it's just slop. It's like, well, no,
Oh
it's not
yeah.
just slop. It's magic, is what it is, and you're just bored of it.
Yeah, I share the exact same sentiment as you, and I have to be quite careful because sometimes I fall into the same trap. Because I think, like, even if we're not talking about Sora 2, we're not talking about images or anything of the sort. I mean, music's another big one. That's a whole new can of worms. If you've heard generations from the new Sony platform, my goodness. But if we're talking about things such as large language models, you quite literally have the entire world history in your pocket at this point. You have all sorts of information in your pocket. There is literally nothing you can't know, at least at a basic level. And yet people go, no, it's just useless. There's no point in using it. But I'm like, well, there is, because, and ultimately the person who uses this technology is at such a massive benefit compared to the person who doesn't.
Yeah,
And thinking about output, I mean, my God, the days of writing 500 words of copy, which would take, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 minutes for the normal copywriter, now you can generate a base template in, well, a second or two. I don't know what the average speed is, but think about the amount of time saved. And yes, you'll still have to edit it, but you'll
yeah,
have to edit any copy anyway. So I think when people talk about, oh, it's not there, it's not good enough, I think you're crazy. It is
yeah,
good
yeah,
enough.
yeah,
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 it's mental.
yeah. I think we're just moving into a world where it's, the idea of, if I brief somebody to create a blog or something now, I will assume they're going to use AI, right? I will assume that the process of writing whereas the process used to be, you go and research all the things that you want to, you want to write about, and then you sit down and then you write a first draft, and then you edit it, write a second draft, polish, send. The process now is, you go and research, you structure your context for your prompting,
Mm,
right? You get all of the different sources that you want to use, and then you sort of write a vague structure, and then you have a conversation with the LLM about what it is that you want to create. I mean, this is how I do it anyway. And then that's the process. I'm not writing any of the finished copy myself, well, apart from a bit of editing, I suppose. But it's just a
mm,
completely different process. It's like going from typewriters to word processors, right? You don't have to
mm,
start a new page every time you make a mistake,
so,
right? It's like,
mm,
you don't have to rewrite everything by hand every time you want something changed. You can rework
yeah.
a section, much quicker. It's Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think people are very dismissive of how important something like this is because it is a speed thing. So the days of I can't remember what I know there are well, I don't remember what the workhouses or wheelhouses that used to generate, well, output, 10 pieces of copy a day, which was considered, like ridiculous amount and for very, very cheap. But I think these days the concept of copy wheelhouses, and for those who are listening who don't quite know what that is basically where a company, let's say like Coca-Cola, will hire a copy company and they'll just output endless amounts of copy. And this was pre-AI. So they would spend pennies on the dollar to get the copy for whatever reason. Maybe it's SEO, who knows? But that's typically what it was for. But nowadays those concepts are over because AI is here to basically take the brunt away. And even if we're talking about the quality aspects of it and people going on and on about slop again and again, it really doesn't matter if the content is written by AI. What really matters is if the content's actually useful.
yeah,
And I think when we talk about slop, it's just such a an insane thing to call something that's useful. Because, okay, sure, it might be AI generated, but on the other hand, the information in this AI generated piece could potentially change your life, or it could be unfathomably interesting.
Yeah.
And I think people are very dismissive just because of the AI connotation, and I think that's a pity.
Yeah, and you know, it's not like there wasn't ever any bad copy before AI. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
there was terrible TV, there was terrible articles, there was terrible blogs, there was terrible movies. You know, it's not
yeah.
like there was no bad content out there before AI. It's just that
Well,
there's
that
more
that's
of
it.
everything.
Yeah, that's it. I think most people just assume that pre-AI everything was a mastercraft and
Yeah,
artisanal excellence, but actually, if you have a look at that pre-AI, the copy was actually, some of it was quite okay, but for the most part, it wasn't all there.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I mean, even with stock images, although those are dwindling at the moment, it won't be too long until there are AI images for everything as well.
yeah,
These aren't bad things; it's just that these are developments. But yeah, the way that people treat it, you would have thought, oh, pre 2019, the world was just like in the second or third Renaissance, and everyone was painting masterpieces, and everything was a Pulitzer Prize winning piece, and actually it was just BuzzFeed listicles for the most
yeah,
part,
yeah,
and that was it. It's
yeah, yeah,
insane. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
The good old days of
yeah, the
13
good old
gifts
days.
that remind you of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You
Oh God,
know.
don't.
Um, but anyway, so look, just I just want to I want to make sure that there's some stuff that people can come away from this having mined your knowledge, especially on the work you're doing with enterprises. So we touched on the
Mm,
legal side. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're up to date with what the legal process is. And is
mm.
there anything else that you would advise people that want to get into your industry or want to be working, with big, Fortune 500s or whatever, like any other lessons that you've really taken away from the work that you've done that you think are worth passing on?
Yeah. I think the first thing, and this is the big take, I suppose this is the meat of something for anyone who's listening to this to take away, is depending on what side of things you're on, let's say it's large language models, which is usually the case. I think the very first thing is to write down your process, use a Notion doc or Word doc or something like that. Like really think about what you do and take that away. If you've got a briefing from your manager and then you start writing copy, that's a good start. And that's how it all begins. So note it down. And then when you have a list of steps of what you do, start thinking how AI can fit into those steps. And the reason I say this is because I don't know, let's talk about an agent that writes copy for the websites. If you're talking about a Fortune 500, 100% they've got a style guide, 100% they've got key terms they're monitoring for over the year, and 100% are looking to rank for particular kinds of things. And the important thing you can do for yourself is you can start thinking, okay, well, if we need a style guide, let's take the style guide. Let's take our general written communications. Let's take all this sort of stuff, and then let's start inputting that into an agent, so that when you start coming to the agent side of things or the prompting side of things, you're not sort of endlessly prompting and trying to get the perfect piece. Instead, it's now referring to important context of how that copy is meant to sound,
Mm,
and that alone will save you quite a lot of pain and heartache. If you're not using agents, if you're in a Fortune 500, the chances are you're going to be using Microsoft Copilot. That's just the way it is because of Azure's security settings. In the event that you're not, it'll probably be something like ChatGPT Enterprise or a wrapper. But I would say first find the things that you need, the style guide, find all that stuff, put it into the agent. If not, then make sure you have it to hand so that you can prompt and use the pieces as reference for the AI or as context. And then try testing and reiterating A/B tests, figure out what model works the best for you. 9 out of 10 times is going to be ChatGPT 4.0, and then you'll make a few edits here and there. But as soon as you have a process of how you work, you can start seeing AI can slot in here, 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 and here. And this is where the human aspect needs to be. And as time goes on, that will become a normal workflow. It might feel a little awkward at first, but once you get used to it, you'll be saving a lot more time than usual. It's the same with image generation and music generation in that sense, and or even movie generation. And that's having a framework and a template to go back to when it comes to prompting.
mm,
And I know with ChatGPT you can use a custom GPT, but if we're thinking about something like, I don't know, well, okay, let's use ChatGPT as an example. You can use a custom GPT to just constantly output images that have the same sort of feel, the same sort of vibe, that sort of stuff. And you shouldn't be afraid to add to the prompt things like shot by an iPhone 15, iPhone 12, or shot by Samsung S21 or whatever,
yeah.
so that the output matches. And same for Sora 2, same for Higgsfield, I guess, with all of their image and video models. If there is a particular field you're going for, you have to make sure that's templated down and part of the workflow or the framework. What else could I add? Then at the very end of it, when you do have your final output, just edit it, just read over it. I know it seems a bit, what's the point? Because now we have an AI doing all the work, but just read over, edit, and be very, very critical of what the AI says, because you just never know. It might say something that's completely wrong, and then you can manually edit it yourself. And maybe that's actually another good point. If it is just a single sentence that needs to be changed, don't bother going to the AI to change it. Just change it yourself. Don't start reprompting and going, you've done this wrong, do this again, or do that. Just change it yourself.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, one, it keeps your skill sharp, but two, it allows you to be a bit more personal with how you want it to sound, and you don't want it to be hands off everything to AI. That's from a framework perspective. And I suppose one other question that will probably be asked in a follow up is, well, how do I know what framework or what should I start talking about? Figure out what's taking you a lot of time. I think a lot of people who are in creative positions, whether it's copywriting, image, well, just photography, whatever it might be, will figure out there's something which sucks away a lot of their time. And 9 out of 10 times it's something like admin. So if there are things that are causing you to work a load of hours and not actually do the job you're supposed to be doing, figure out what that is, put the process down on what's causing it, and then see where AI can jump in and take some of that burden off of your plate.
Great advice. It's probably worth me mentioning as the representative of Pencil that in terms of image and video gen and text gen, a lot of this context engineering, or a lot of this context can be uploaded into the Pencil platform if you're a user, and a lot of this work can be done for you. Custom agents can be built inside Pencil as well. So obviously we're agnostic on the stream, but there is a lot of this functionality is available to you as users of the platform as well. So that's a nice little segue for me to get the sales message in there. Apologies, got to be done. It's yeah.
So good.
So look, lots of great advice. Is there anything, as we think about wrapping up, that you're especially excited about coming up over the next couple of months? Like anything that has really got you kind of anticipating in terms of model releases or any kind of work that you have coming up that's particularly awesome moving into the new year?
I think, especially as someone who's in the UK and has to listen to EU rules, I think the very, very big one is us getting a hold of Sora 2 in the UK and just generally in the EU, because quite a lot of talent is trapped in the EU and wants to work in AI. But the problem is, of course, our hands are tied for the most part. We get models a lot later than most other countries. We get access to things a lot later, just as a whole. But I think things that I'm excited for, big question. Because at the moment there's a race of large language models, and we have Gemini, ChatGPT, and I suppose Grok clawing at the top. But I think we're going to start seeing these platforms diverge a little bit. I think with Google, they're already starting to. They're looking at VO3, they're looking at Nano Banana and all the rest, and we're going to see that divergence of where these large language model companies want to put their AI and how they want to separate themselves from the rest.
Yeah.
I think OpenAI is going to release something phenomenal probably in the next year to make up for the catastrophic release of ChatGPT 5. And I also think that Grok is going to do something probably equally strange as having their AI avatar like Annie. I think, knowing Elon Musk, he's probably going to do something equally outrageous to keep the eyes on Grok.
Yeah.
But we'll see. It's the thing is with this AI thing, I don't think anyone could have predicted it would have gone the way that it has. And I think we can look at all the critics in the world and like Jan LeCun, and we can go and say he's right. Large language models are going nowhere. But the fact of the matter is he wasn't aware that large language models would be as big as they are now. And now it's in every corporation on earth. It's in everyone's hands, and it is a massive, massive deal. And I don't think anyone can anticipate where it's moving currently, because we just simply don't know. I think the one thing I am excited about, and I think that's all the technical nonsense that I talk about, but I think the one thing I am genuinely excited about, and your listeners will probably catch on to this, or if they're watching the video, they'll certainly catch on, is these glasses are Meta Ray-Bans.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. I think the one thing I'm very, very, very excited about and very optimistic and bullish about are AI wearables. And
Yeah.
it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And it's a case of people having access to this AI in their pocket. But now you have it on your head. So if you're wearing sunglasses and you're in, let's say, Rome or Paris, and you have a little display on the side that tells you where to go down the street and turn, that's useful. But thinking about it on a deeper level, if you have access to a large language model that can give you any information whenever you want, just quite literally like a pinch of the fingers, what that means is you can look at a whiteboard if you're a student and get answers for mathematical questions pretty much instantaneously. You would just double tap your fingers and get a prompt, and then it will just say the answer to this problem is this. You would look at a signpost that's written in Portuguese and ask the large language model, what does it say? And it'll tell it to you in English. And even if we're going to look at Google's version of these wearables, you'll have a live AI in your ear talking to you constantly as you walk down the street and giving information. And what that means is you can go to places like Italy, or you can go to Paris or Japan, anywhere really, and have a constant tour guide talking in your ear about the history of the place or what this thing is or interesting recommendations for the area. And I think at the moment, when we think about AI assistants, we're thinking like saying, hey Siri, and Siri giving a one-off answer or prompting with your voice live on the train, which is always a little bit awkward. But if you're able to just simply write on your lap or write on your hand with the neural band or whatever it might be, that changes things quite dramatically for society, because the the bottleneck of knowledge isn't suddenly saying a vocal prompt or taking a picture or typing on your phone. The bottleneck's removed because on your glasses you just tap the side and get an answer instantaneously.
Yeah.
What that means is you've augmented your knowledge to the point of you can practically look at anything on Earth and understand it within seconds. So what that means for humanity, I don't know. Whoever uses it the best will benefit the most, and I think students will benefit the most from it, because it's going to alter the way that universities and colleges are run. Because you can't deprive a student off of glasses, you can't deprive them of a technology either. It's just not the way to go. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm very, very bullish and optimistic about it. But yeah, that's probably the one thing I'm looking forward to. Um, Even realities have G2 currently. Google Glass is going to be releasing sometime next year. Samsung have their AI glasses, and that seems to be where we're going as a whole currently. So it's going to be an interesting future.
Do you recommend the Ray-Bans?
Yes, but not for the reasons you might think. So before B started my business and stuff, I used to have to sit in meetings, and they were agonizing. If you've had to do board meetings, they're about 5 to 6 hours long, and I've sat through board meetings where I really didn't need to be there, but they just wanted me there for the sake of it. And you can play music through these things. I tell you what, when you're sat through a boring board meeting and there's nothing that's relevant to you, and you can just tap the side of your glasses and listen to a podcast or music just to yourself while pretending you're engaged, I tell you what, it's worth every penny. It's so good. It's amazing.
Brilliant. Okay, good to know. Well, I pity the colleagues on the next board meeting with you. You've given the game away now. You're not going to be able to do it anymore.
Oh well,
Uh,
that's the value you're getting from my
yeah,
insight.
yeah, 100%. Awesome. All right. Well, look, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is important to let people know about, like anything that you're doing, or anything that relevant to the conversation that I haven't asked you that perhaps I should have done?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything. I think just like all things involving AI, it's somewhat important to be aware of what's going on, but there's no need to drown yourself in information. I think the AI field moves so quickly that yes, you could read a newsletter and you could take in the info, but ultimately, by the time tomorrow comes, there'll be another large language model, there'll be new developments. It's impossible to keep on top of everything. I know it's a stressful thing, but apart from that, just check on it weekly, stay updated with what's going on, look at interesting things, avoid Reddit because Reddit's just a pessimistic hellhole. And ultimately, just do what you want. I mean, don't listen to people go, oh, it's AI slop, it's this, it's that. Just do what you want. And if you think the AI is benefiting you, use it. Don't be shamed into not using it. It's a mistake that many people fall into. There's no benefit in hardship. There is just you, the project, and what you've got to do. Don't think that because you're doing it in a more difficult way, it makes it more valuable. That's just simply not the case.
100%. Well, look, on that note, I think that's a good one to wrap up on. So, everybody, I hope you found that useful. I know I did. Lots of really interesting and actionable insights there on working with AI. So, really great session, I thought. So, thanks for joining us. A quick reminder, we're here every single Tuesday. This is a slightly early one. We're usually more on an American time zone, but hopefully some of you APAC followers will have been able to catch this one as well as Europe. But we're here every single Tuesday. We're talking creative, we're talking product, we're talking AI industry, we're talking prompting frameworks, as you found out today, and useful practical tips on using the Pencil platform itself. Lots of exciting stuff coming up. We'll be trailing that on the LinkedIn page, so make sure you're following and joining us here every Tuesday. As I said at the top, the Pencil community is popping off. There's lots of creativity going on over there. So if you are a Pencil user, make sure you're signing up to the community and going over and joining our training team for anything that you need to know about getting the most out of AI in creativity and marketing and advertising, because that's what we're here for. But yeah, for now, for this week, that's it. Edward, thanks so much for joining us. It's been really, really awesome to have you on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody, that's it. We'll see you next week.